This video will examine the history of diagnosing individuals along with the evolution of the care they have received over the years. It is imperative that lawmakers and legislative bodies understand this history as policies and systems are developed to ensure that the state of care and treatment continues to improve and reach its greatest potential. Throughout history, individuals with intellectual disabilities were dehumanized and isolated. Individuals were locked away in asylums, workhouses, or poorhouses or jails if their families could not care for them. Or they were sent away to training schools or custodial institutions where individuals were used as a free labor force under the guise of learning functional skills. Many U.S. cities had ugly laws that banned people deemed diseased, maimed, mutilated, or in any way deformed from public spaces. Placement was dependent on society's view of their functioning and how it was defined. For centuries, experts have driven society's understanding of those with disabilities. Diagnoses were actually derogatory terms such as idiots, simpletons, imbeciles, moron, and retarded. These definitions by experts were accepted by society. The issue with all of the labels utilized for individuals with disabilities, every one of them became derogatory and used in public as a slur to demean, taunt, or bully others. Individuals have been labeled inhumanely, and the quality of care and services were reflected in these beliefs and assumptions. The popular sentiment of the early 20th century was that intellectual and developmental disabilities were a genetic issue and the cause of social ills, such as poverty and violence in the community. A popular belief was these individuals should be locked away where they could not cause harm to the general public. The practice of institutionalization became the norm, and they were locked away in training schools based on the recommendations of the family doctor, the police, or at the family's insistence. The first state-funded establishment was opened in 1851 by the state of New York as the New York Asylum for Idiots. This first state-funded school was tasked with educating children with intellectual disabilities and became the example for other states to open their own so-called schools. Most of these simply became isolated institutions where individuals were trained to work and worked for free. Texas opened its first state-supported institution in 1904 in Abilene, Texas, as the State Epileptic Colony. This site became what is now the Abilene State Supported Living Center in 1957 when it transitioned to strictly caring for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The second state-supported institution was the State Colony for the Feeble-Minded, opened in 1915 and was later renamed the Austin State School. Near the end of the last century, many states began to close their state-supported living centers due to lawsuits, inefficiencies, and horrible conditions, as was the case with the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York. Over 6,000 individuals were housed there. They were kept in deplorable conditions and used as medical subjects for hepatitis research. Senator Robert F. Kennedy toured the institution in 1965 and proclaimed that individuals in the overcrowded facility were living in filth and dirt, their clothing in rags, in rooms less comfortable and cheerful than the cages in which we put animals in a zoo, and offered a series of recommendations for improving conditions. However, the facility was not closed until 22 years later. Another common practice became sterilization. To stop the genetics of intellectual disabilities from being passed to the next generation and to rid society of the unfit, over 30 states legalized compulsory sterilization laws. Even today, 17 states still allow permanent sterilization of children with disabilities. Justice Thurgood Marshall conveyed historical sentiment best in the case of City of Cleburne, Texas versus Cleburne Living Center in 1985. He stated, "Fueled by the rising tide of social Darwinism, the science of eugenics, and the extreme xenophobia of those years, leading medical authorities and others began to portray the feeble-minded as a menace to society and civilization, responsible in a large degree for many, if not all, of our social problems. A regime of state-mandated segregation and degradation soon emerged that, in its virulence and bigotry, rivaled and indeed paralleled the worst excesses of Jim Crow. This is why laws like IDEA in 1975 and reauthorized in 1990 and 2004 that allowed for equal education for all were critical. people with disabilities have proven they can lead meaningful, productive lives. However, your work as elected officials and government staff in Texas is not done. It is estimated that as many as 30 to 40% of persons with intellectual disabilities are diagnosed with a mental health condition and are 3 to 5 times more likely to have a co-occurring mental health condition than the general population. Texas is home to the highest percentage of adults with a cognitive disability who could not see a doctor due to cost. In the 2019 Case for Inclusion, Texas was ranked 49th on the best performing states for IDD services list. Texas is known for being bigger and doing it better, and this is why this information is vital for elected officials. To do better, everyone must understand the barriers, funding, and supports needed to move our great state from 49th to number 1. Our care needs to match our Texas pride.